Today I am going to give you a brief introduction of capital structure. In financial management, estimating capital requirement and its procurement is necessary, and it is the role of every financial manager. But the formation of capital structure is important. For raising long-term finance, a company can issue three types of securities, wherein the number one is equity shares, second one is preference shares, and the third one is debentures. Shares are also called as owned funds, and debenture can also be called as borrowed fund. We often call it as debt funds. Let's take an example to make capital structure to be more clear. Suppose the total capital requirement of a company is 10 lakhs and the firm finances its capital requirement by raising funds from long-term sources available to him, that is 6 lakhs from equity shares and 4 lakhs from debentures. Then we call it as firm is 60% equity financed and 40% debt financed. Here the debt equity ratio is 2:3. So capital structure is the proportion of debt and equity in which a corporate finances its business. However, the proportion of each of these could vary from business to business. But one thing to be noted here is that every security from which we can raise money for business has some cost associated with it, and we often call it as cost of capital. Whenever an investor lends money to the firm, either by investing his money in equity shares or debentures, he expects something in return from his investment. Here we can note that what we call as capital for a firm, that same capital becomes investment for an investor. So while firm raise money, there is always a cost associated with every security. So the minimum required rate of return becomes cost of capital of a firm. So the question here is, what is the best way to finance a company? In other words, what I am trying to find out, is there an optimal ratio or the capital structure for a company? So here we are trying to find out that capital structure which can maximize the value of firm and can minimize the cost of raising capital. That is, it should minimize the weighted average cost of capital. We often call this kind of capital structure as the optimum capital structure. But there is no fixed optimum capital structure for every organization. The optimum capital structure for each organization can differ from one to another. But the main objective behind finding out the optimum capital structure should be that kind of capital structure which can actually maximize the value of firm or the price of share in the market, and it should minimize the cost of raising capital or the cost of capital. While forming an optimum capital structure for a firm, a number of factors influences the capital structure decisions. And these factors could be the growth and stability of sales. A fixed cost is associated with the debt financing. That's why if a firm is having stable sales, then obviously he can go for more and more of debt financing. While if the sales of an organization is not stable, then the firm should go for equity financing because there is no fixed cost associated with it. The fixed cost here I am talking about is the fixed rate of interest that the firm needs to pay to the creditors. Now the second one is the cost of capital. This I have already discussed with you that the cost of capital plays a very important role while selecting the source of finance and forming the capitalization of a firm. The firm should analyze the costs associated with each and every source before making the selection about each source of finance. Now the next one could be the nature and the size of business. A concern which cannot provide stable earnings due to the nature of its business will have to rely mainly on equity capital. Similarly, small companies have to depend mainly upon owned capital as it is very difficult for them to raise long-term loans. The another point could be Control. Since equity shareholders have voting rights in the company, so they are directly or indirectly being involved in the working of a company. From the point of view of control, debt financing is recommended. But depending largely upon debt financing may create other problems such as too much restriction imposed upon by the lenders or suppliers of the finance. So selecting the optimum capital structure is one of the most important part of financial management, since it can affect the value of the firm and the price of the shares and ultimately the cost of capital. That's why selecting a proper capital structure is very important for an organization and it should be done wisely. Thank you.